when we consider empathy in the flow of this, and I know you and I have had conversations about this offline, it's so easy to desire to say that parents in these countries who are selling kids into these sex trafficking situations are monsters, or that the situations where these are occurring, like to really make it more about how bad these people are. But you had the empathy to go down and actually check out the situations and the scenarios that were creating this situation where it might occur. Can you talk a little bit about what you found? And when we talk about fixing a solution or creating a solution to fix a problem, part of what we have to do is see the root cause, right? Anytime we have to understand the root cause of what's occurring. Can you talk about some of the root causes that you found and how you felt when you discovered those?
Sure. So, if you take the United States, right, I just kind of talked about some of the root causes: broken families, foster care, runaways, right? And whatever family problems cause those problems for those kids to be put in compromised positions is one of the things that happens in the States. And runaways is a big one in the States, where there's guys walking the streets looking for young, vulnerable girls and, get them on drugs, and then that's it. So then went down to, has spent some time in Costa Rica. And if I by no means am I an expert on this, right? The only thing I have is experience, because I think, if you're interested and you want to do something, you can't make decisions from the chair, right? You have to make decisions from the field, right? You have to, if you want to be effective, you've got to have the experience of what's happening on the streets with this, right? And so, we went down to Costa Rica and spent some time, a lot of time in the tin shack communities, where actually a lot of the people had escaped from Nicaragua to these tin shack communities in Costa Rica. So if you can imagine, and these places were awful, right? I can't imagine how bad it was in Nicaragua that forced them to want to go to a tin shack community in Costa Rica. But, after we had to get permission from the gangs, like we had some locals who were very connected in the community, and they kind of took us through a tour of these areas. We had to get permissions from the gangs to walk through and have their protection to make sure that, we didn't get shot or killed or stabbed. And when you walk through, there was 3 and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds that were sitting in these tin shacks, and there were no parents around. There was a dirt floor and no light, and sewage running through the streets, right? You hear about it all the time. And I'm like, well, I don't understand what the hell is going on here. And so, in those situations, the fathers are on drugs or on alcohol, and they're completely out of the situation. And the women have a choice to make. They can stay home and maybe or maybe not get a meal for their kids, or go to work in the coffee fields for $1.50, $2, maybe $3 a day. In order to do that, they have to leave their kids alone, and then expect the community to take care of them, which they don't, right? And then come back 8-10 hours later and then go feed their kids and be with their kids, right? But they're exhausted, right, from working in the coffee fields all day in the heat, and then they got to deal with their kids who are so needy at that point, and just to feed them. That's terrible. It's just I can't believe it, right? And so but the other problem is then there's predators within the communities that are taking these kids and trafficking them, right? But the desperation of poverty will cause people to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do, right? There was one woman who she was sold into slavery by her parents at the age of 9. And when I had heard that before, I thought, well, those parents should be shot or killed, right? Literally, that's just how I feel. I am what I am. And then when I saw what poverty could make people do, and the desperation and the hopelessness, they're shells. right? They're people without hope. They're people without a plan. They're people without an avenue to move into something better. And they're just surviving. They're not even surviving, they're existing, right? They're it's beyond that. And so, when you find out what really happened with that one girl, because I ended up meeting her 30 years later, she was rescued by an organization, and she became the head cook of this organization. She made the best banana bread in the world. She was so awesome, right? But the family couldn't feed her. The traffickers came in and told the family that we're going to take her to a better place. We're going to give her another opportunity. We're going to put this kid in school. Whatever it was they promised. And then they gave them a little bit of money. And so they get rid of their daughter in the hope that she could have a better future, to be turned into a sex traffic victim within an hour after they bought her. Yeah. And then you understand, right? It's systemic. The poverty caused that. That family had some money, they would have never done that. They would have never sold that kid to a better opportunity. So there's always more to the story, right? And it's and then you do have empathy, right? You do understand, like, that it would kill me to sell my kids to a better opportunity to put them in a worse situation, of course, than anybody else. We love our kids. I wouldn't do that to my dog.
And ultimately, that family didn't know that that's what they were doing.
Nope.
But until you went there, saw the conditions, took the time to get to know the girl and understood, then it's so much easier to sit back and judge and evaluate the situation.
That's right. Right.
I feel like many of us do that. And that's why I'm grateful you're coming onto the show and talking about this. Because I do feel like so many of us hear about this through other avenues, and we desire to make monsters of people versus understand that, hey, there's a deeper root issue here, and one that we can all contribute to helping to solve, which is, okay, there are horrendous conditions that people are living in right now. What are we going to do about that?
Right.
So that those individuals, when people come up and say, we're going to take your daughter, your son into a better life, they're like, what better life? We have a great life. We have enough food. We have shelter. We have love for our children. We have a means to protect ourselves. The life we have is good. And so that no longer becomes the root issue.
That's right. Yeah, and to put it in perspective, like that, you take that, I never thought about this, but that particular family that sold their girl at 9 years old, if they had had $8 a day living in Costa Rica, that would have never happened. Now it was 30 years ago, right? So I'm totally unaware. But if somebody was giving them $8 a day, they would almost be rich, upper middle class in that world, right? And that would have had a totally different experience. And think of all the excess cash we have in this country, right? That could prevent something like that happening. And so, what can we do now to prevent it from happening to the next girl?
Exactly. What infrastructure can we build out? What can we do to fix the root problem instead of casting stones and creating monsters?
Right. That's right. I love that. I love how you put that, because truly I thought that they were monsters until I got there. And, not to say that, not maybe a minority of them are just straight monsters. Right.
Yes. And that'll be true in any scenario. There
Right.
are always. And no matter what silo we're in, right? Mm-hmm. Even in faith, in business, and there are always going to be people who ego has trumped everything else, and that occurs. But when we sit with it and we just keep digging and digging and digging and using empathy and heart and connection and compassion, then we can truly get to the root and begin to ask, how do we solve this? instead of how do we judge each other for even creating the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I hear you saying in this organization, really going after. And instead of being blind to it because it feels uncomfortable. I mean, it's not a comfortable topic. And so we want to shy away from it. But that's not going to fix it either.
Right.
Because it's happening whether we want to talk about it or we don't.
That's right.